met that dude Duke the night before. We was gambling. The next day, dude followed us to the concert. When we left out the concert, we under the garage. Dude went to his car by himself and walked down to the parking lot.
These street homie that's projecting these rules and then coming here playing like they admirable men with street rules and street exit. Nah, homie, them look was set up that night.
The streets have been buzzing ever since Boosie finally broke his silence and called out J. Prince Jr. by name, throwing gasoline on one of the dirtiest scandals the rap game has seen in years. For the longest time, the blame for Duke the Jeweler's tragic death fell on Boosie, with folks whispering that he lined Duke up, set him in the wrong place at the wrong time, and maybe even orchestrated the whole thing. But now the Baton Rouge rapper is turning the tables, claiming he was used as a fall guy while the real puppeteers sat back and let him drown in accusations. The heat is shifting to Houston's most infamous family, mob ties, and the narrative is changing fast.
Man, Lord.
What went down that night wasn't just a robbery gone bad. It's starting to look like a setup designed to protect bigger names and bury smaller ones, and Boosie's refusal to stay quiet has cracked open a whole mess of dirt that people tried to keep sealed up. The night of September 2022 is where the fire started. Duke the Jeweler, a 29-year-old self-made boss out of Chicago, had just finished flexing his talent and his ice at Boosie's concert in Houston. Hours later, he was gunned down in what was called a parking lot robbery, stripped of his jewelry, cash, and even his phone. To the outside world, it looked like a tragedy tied to being flashy in the wrong place.
Any real dude that's ever really been in LA, he checked in. Any real dude that's ever been in Atlanta, he checked in. If you moving and you getting money, you gonna check in because you need to know the right places to be and places not to be. That's a businessman.
But the streets weren't buying that clean-cut story. Rumors exploded instantly. Boosie invited Duke. Boosie's people were at the scene, and even claims that Duke's Louis Vuitton bag turned up in Boosie's house circulated online. In the court of public opinion, that was all it took. Boosie looked guilty. He already had a history, gun cases, messy trials, his name tied to charges he beat years back. Folks didn't need proof, just a narrative, and the narrative became that Boosie set the whole thing up. But cracks in that story were always there if you look close enough.
Somebody be checking in. That's your favorite thing to do, check in with somebody that's gonna rob your stupid ass.
Wow.
Yo, you think that guy, the guy that you don't know in California got your back?
First, Duke wasn't killed in Baton Rouge, Boosie's territory. He was taken out in Houston, a city that's not under Boosie's control, but firmly under the grip of J. Prince Jr. and his mob ties network. And second, Duke wasn't just some random victim who got caught slipping. He was at a dice game, one of those high-stakes setups where egos and money collide. And sitting at that same table was none other than J. Prince Jr. himself. That detail flipped the conversation, because if Duke was surrounded by mob ties, then how could Boosie be the mastermind?
You heard Junior was the father, and after your mom did her due diligence, what was your thought?
I think that this girl that had the baby, I think she used to work around Junior. So I believe bro bumped into her around Junior, you know what I'm saying?
Suddenly, the whispers began to shift, with people asking the obvious. If mob ties runs Houston, why would an outsider like Boosie risk pulling a stunt in someone else's city? As one Houston local bluntly said online, why would Boosie set a robbery up in a place he's not from? That would be bold and disrespectful. The streets started side-eyeing the princes. Boosie's decision to finally speak up turned the whole thing on its head. He made it clear he didn't know Duke personally like that. They met casually at a dice game, and Duke came to his concert the next day. Hours later, Duke was gone. That's not a friendship or a partnership, that's coincidence.
Man,
But coincidence was all folks needed to make Boosie the scapegoat, because he was already easy to frame. His past made him the perfect target for blame, while J. Prince Jr. stayed in the shadows, controlling narratives through silence. And in the rap world, silence can be louder than words. People began piecing together that Boosie wasn't just in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was deliberately positioned as the bait. When someone needs to take the fall, you pick the guy with the most baggage, the one already seen as guilty in the eyes of the public. That was Boosie to a T. The more this story unraveled, the messier it got. Wack 100 jumped in and didn't bite his tongue for a second. He said it straight. The dice game wasn't some friendly gamble, it was rigged. According to him, Duke hit too hard at the table, winning when he wasn't supposed to, and that broke the system. You can't outplay a table that's fixed because the whole setup is controlled by the crew running it.
He was walking to his car or something, some dude tried to rob him. Some dudes tried to rob him. I had just met dude yesterday. We was in a garage. He must have walked outside to the parking lot. We was in a garage. We heard this shit.
Wack claimed J. Prince Jr.'s circle, including dudes like Lil Cam, were behind the so-called robbery. He painted a picture of Duke falling into a trap, and when he slipped, he paid with his life. To Wack, this wasn't some tragic random robbery. This was mob ties flexing control, punishing someone who wasn't supposed to win. That's not protection. That's predatory power.
If you think about him, here's a clown. Like, I love the hip-hop culture. I'm in love with the hip-hop culture. Blood, sweat, and tears went in my movement for the hip-hop culture.
Charleston White doubled down on the same point, calling Duke's death preventable. He dragged the whole check-in culture for what it really is, extortion dressed up as protection. He said plain and simple, artists and influencers pull up to Houston thinking mob ties will keep them safe, but what they're really doing is walking into shark-infested waters. Duke checked in, and instead of being guarded, he was surrounded, played, and clipped. Charleston's take hit home because it exposed how fragile the rap ecosystem really is. Duke wasn't some reckless kid showing off. He was a professional, a businessman who trusted the wrong system. But in Mob Tie's world, naivete can be fatal. Charleston didn't sugarcoat it either. He called it ritualistic, a setup that spoke to a deeper sickness in the industry where silence and compliance keep people alive, while truth tellers get buried. And while all this was circling, Boosie sat at the center of the storm, forced to wear the mask of guilt he swears he never deserved. But by breaking that silence and calling out J. Prince Jr., he didn't just defend himself, he cracked open the very foundation of fear that's been holding Houston's rap politics together. As the noise grew louder, the cracks in Mob Tie's empire started showing for real. It wasn't just Boosie pointing the finger. Other big voices in the culture were chiming in, and their words carried weight. Wack 100 was already blasting J. Prince Jr., but then Charleston White jumped in too, and when Charleston talks, he doesn't hold back. He painted Houston as a jungle where Mob Ties turned the check-in system into a death trap. He flat out said Duke was led into a rigged environment believing he was secure, when in reality, he was standing in the lion's den. Think about it. How does somebody check in, do everything by the book, and still end up dead? Charleston said it clear. That ain't protection, that's extortion with a fake smile. And if that wasn't enough, he widened the conversation to show that this isn't just a Houston problem, it's industry-wide. Out west, Big U been accused of the same thing. Rappers like PNB Rock allegedly checked in, only to end up robbed or worse. Even Schoolboy Q said, at best, rappers are getting robbed by the same people they checked in with. That's not safety, that's business built on fear. The more people spoke, the clearer it became. Duke didn't just lose a dice game, he lost his life to a power system designed to keep certain people untouchable. And it wasn't lost on anybody that this same system failed Takeoff too. He checked in, he was surrounded by mob ties, and he still got hit in Houston. That wasn't coincidence, that was consistency. Boosie used that exact point to back himself up, saying, how could I be the one lining people up when even stars like Takeoff get clipped in Houston? And the streets listened, because the pattern was impossible to ignore. The same names kept popping up, the same city, the same so-called protection. It made the entire empire of Mob Ties look shaky, like a deck of cards ready to collapse. Then came the finesse situation, and that turned the whispers into shouts. Word hit the net that J. Prince Jr. had allegedly gotten Finesse 2 times girl pregnant behind his back. For a crew that built its image on loyalty and family ties, that kind of move screamed betrayal. Finesse, who once self-cold, and in this industry, silence speaks louder than beef. That fallout cut deep because it showed Mob Ties was losing allies from the inside too. And if the house is divided, it can't stand. Fans online started piecing it all together. Takeoff gone, Duke gone, Finesse gone, and Boosie speaking out. Every road seemed to lead back to one person, J. Prince Jr. The internet flipped completely, and J. Prince Sr. had no choice but to step in. The father, the so-called godfather of Houston hip-hop, had to defend the family name, but instead of clearing the air, he came out swinging at Wack 100, calling him a clown, a loudmouth who doesn't know what he's talking about. He tried to flip the script by attacking the messenger instead of addressing the message. But the problem is the streets weren't buying that tactic anymore. They looked at Senior and said, "You're dodging the heat." Because at the end of the day, if Takeoff and Duke both died under Mob Tie's watch, what kind of protector is that? And if this system really is protection, why do so many people end up robbed or shot after checking in? J. Prince Sr. could clown Wack all he wanted, but the bodies and the patterns spoke louder than his words. What made Duke's story hit even harder was who he was and how he got there. He wasn't some industry plant. He wasn't a hanger-on looking for clout. Duke the jeweler built his empire brick by brick, grinding out of Chicago with nothing but a sketchbook, a dream, and his hustle. Back in the early 2000s, he was sketching jewelry designs in small studios, slowly flipping his craft into something bigger. He didn't lean on no label favors or industry connects. His work was pure talent, and that talent turned into legacy when his one-of-one custom pieces started hitting the big stage. Rihanna rocked his pieces, 50 Cent had him cook up something special, even Boosie himself had Duke ice him out. This wasn't a regular jeweler, this was a visionary who turned gold and diamonds into storytelling pieces. And that rise put him in rare air, standing next to artists and stars, but still independent, still owning his grind. That independence is what made him dangerous to the wrong people. When you're talented, respected, and self-made, you don't bend easily. And in an industry where power runs on favors and control, somebody like Duke represented a problem. He didn't owe nobody, he didn't fear nobody, and he wasn't controlled by the politics of checking in. But on that fateful night, he played into a system that didn't protect him, it trapped him. Sources say he ran the dice table that night, allegedly cleaning house and stacking up over $100,000 in winnings. That kind of win doesn't sit well when the table is rigged. And if Wack 100 is right, that win sealed his fate. Minutes later, Duke was stripped of everything, his cash, his jewelry, his phone, and hit multiple times like someone wanted to erase him completely. That wasn't no sloppy robbery. That was an execution, deliberate and personal. And when footage surfaced of Boosie's reaction to Duke's death, it only fueled the suspicion that he wasn't behind it. The man looked broken, like he couldn't even process what happened. His body language didn't scream guilty mastermind, it screamed shock, grief, and frustration. That human reaction didn't match the cold-blooded image of a man setting up one of his own. Instead, it made more sense that Boosie was caught in a storm he didn't create but got blamed for anyway. And now, by dragging J. Prince Jr. into the spotlight, he's flipping the entire script and forcing people to ask questions that the industry's been too scared to ask. By now, the Duke the Jeweler case has become more than just a murder mystery. It's a symbol of how twisted and dangerous the rap game really is when power, fear, and silence are the rules of survival. What started as whispers about Boosie's involvement has transformed into a full-blown indictment of Houston's check-in culture and the Mob Ties empire. And the more you connect the dots, the darker it looks. Duke wasn't just a victim of bad luck. He was walking into a rigged system where survival wasn't guaranteed no matter how much you played by the rules. He checked in, he showed love, he played the dice game, and he still ended up dead. Same story with Takeoff, checked in, surrounded by mob ties, still gunned down in the very city that was supposed to protect him. The evidence keeps pointing in the same direction, and no amount of deflection can erase the pattern. The truth is, Mob Tie's power has always rested on fear and reputation. For decades, J. Prince Sr. built the family name as untouchable, presenting himself as a guardian of the culture, someone artists had to respect when stepping into Houston. But in recent years, that reputation has been cracked wide open. The dice games, the extortion claims, the setups, it all paints a picture of a system that isn't protecting rappers, but exploiting them. And once you see it for what it is, you can't unsee it. Even the fans online are piecing it together with some bluntly saying, J. Prince set him up, not Boosie. Those comments aren't isolated. They're the collective voice of people who are no longer buying the official story. And let's not forget how personal this hit feels. Duke wasn't just another flashy jeweler showing off ice. He was a respected craftsman, a self-made entrepreneur who created art with his hands. His pieces carried stories, legacy, and authenticity. That's why artists like 50 Cent, Rihanna, King Von, and Boosie wanted his work. He was more than a jeweler, he was a cultural figure in his own right. Losing him wasn't just losing another name in the headlines. It was a blow to the heart of the industry, especially to independent hustlers who saw themselves in his grind. His death showed that even the most talented and focused aren't safe when power games and street politics are in play. And that's why the streets are still mourning Duke differently. It felt deliberate, almost ritualistic, like he was removed because he couldn't be controlled. When Boosie finally stepped up and called out J. Prince Jr., it didn't just protect his own name, it broke the silence that so many in the industry have been scared to break. For years, rappers whispered about how dangerous Houston's politics were, but nobody wanted to risk saying it out loud. Now the floodgates are opening. Wack 100 said the dice game was rigged. Charleston White said mob ties turned protection into extortion. Even 50 Cent stirred the pot with cryptic reposts that had people raising eyebrows. And then the fallout with Finesse 2 times drove the point home. If even insiders are walking away from mob ties, the empire isn't as strong as it looks. Silence might have worked in the past, but in the era of social media and fan-driven narratives, silence now looks like guilt. And J. Prince Jr.'s silence on all these rumors has fans convinced he's got something to hide. Meanwhile, J. Prince Sr. trying to clap back at Wack 100 by calling him a clown only exposed how defensive the family has become. Because if you're really clean, you don't need to insult your critics. You show proof, you clear your name, you speak directly to the people. Instead, all the public sees is dodging and name-calling while bodies pile up and unanswered questions grow louder. The coroner's report on Takeoff's death said he was hit multiple times in the head and torso. That's not some stray bullet from crossfire, that's precision, that's intentional. And when you put Duke's execution-style killing right next to it, the pattern screams louder than any denial. What's left now is a crumbling facade. The empire that once scared artists into silence is being questioned in the open. Fans, rappers, bloggers, even insiders, they're all connecting the dots and pointing in the same direction. Mob Ties built its brand on fear and respect, but now it's being exposed as the very opposite of what it claimed to be. Instead of protection, it's extortion. Instead of loyalty, it's betrayal. Instead of safety, it's setups. And Duke's death is the case that finally made people stop whispering and start talking. Boosie may have been blamed at first, but by standing up and speaking out, he's forcing the culture to confront the uncomfortable truth. The game has been dirty for years, and the people running it aren't as untouchable as they want you to believe. So where does it all go from here? That's the million-dollar question. If the empire is cracking, more voices might come forward. If silence equals survival, then speaking out equals risk. But it also equals change. The industry can't heal if everybody stays quiet, and Duke's death proved just how high the cost of silence can be. Maybe more rappers will start breaking away from the old system, refusing to check in, refusing to play games that are stacked against them. Or maybe the cycle continues until more lives are lost. Either way, the conversation has already shifted, and the spotlight is finally on Mob Ties instead of Boosie. What was once a closed-door secret is now public debate, and the pressure isn't going away anytime soon. Boosie said it best when he flipped the script. Y'all tried to line me up. Whether the world believes him or not, one thing is clear, he's no longer the scapegoat in this story. The mask is slipping, the empire is shaking, and the streets are watching closely to see who's brave enough to speak next, or who might vanish for daring to tell the truth.